Hey guys, I'm a Dimension Jumper, and today I'll be reviewing Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, which was released back on the 29th of February of this year. And this is the sequel to Final Fantasy VII Remake, which are both remakes of the original Final Fantasy VII, and Rebirth is the sequel to the trilogy as a whole, and we'll be getting the final game sometime in the future. It hasn't been announced yet, the third game, but we'll probably be getting the remake or the third game of the Final Fantasy VII game trilogy sometime in the next few years or so. But for Reunion in particular, this takes place a few days or so after the events of Remake, and it's up to Cloud and his crew to try and find where Sephiroth is, and one of the main clues is to follow the robed characters that were seen in parts of Remake, and there's also, you get to see bits of the Wisps, which are basically the Fate Ghosts, which kind of try and keep the canon of Final Fantasy VII, or try and keep the events that happen in the trilogy as a whole to how it was like in the original. So, for example, in Remake, as a quick example, there's a mission you have to go on that goes to the second reactor, and in the original, it's you, Barrett, Cloud, Barrett, and Tifa, and I think Wedge and Biggs as well, I believe. But in the remake, it was Jessie. But because it was supposed to be Cloud, the Wisps kind of changed the canon a bit, or change it a bit. So now that in the remake, it was Jessie who gets an injury, and now it's Cloud who has to take her place and go back, or go to the second reactor, therefore continuing the canon of Final Fantasy VII. And the Wisps do appear here and there throughout the game. For example, there's a bit when Cloud and his crew are in Gongaga, which is where Zack is originally from, and there's a bit where Tifa has fallen into this giant pool of Marco, and she sees a bunch of Wisps kind of fighting against each other, with Tifa having a bunch of Wisps on her side and Sephiroth having a bunch of Wisps on his side. And yeah, and you get to see them every now and again throughout the game. And I would say this game, in terms of continuing on from where Remake left off, is a lot better in terms of how exploration and some game mechanics are done. For example, now that we're in like the more exploration part of the game, I would say, you can now go to all these different areas. So as I said before, you can go to Gongaga, there's the Golden Saucer, obviously, and there's a variety of other places you can go to in the game. And their exploration in this game is very, very good, because like when you compare it to Remake, there was some exploration parts in that. It's just that it was very, very... It came every once in a while in every chapter or every other chapter or so, and it was basically, when it came to exploration, it's just the town or the area that you're in at the time. So where there was the Sector 5 slums, or in the Wall Market area, or wherever you were in that part of the game, it just, the exploration was there. It was just very, very minimal. But now with Rebirth, there's a whole lot more exploration. There's more quests to do. There's more things to see and to fight, and there's a lot more side quests and stuff, which I think is really good, because I did enjoy the side quests in Remake. It's just that there was only about, say, 18 or so quests overall, but now there's a whole lot more. There's about, I don't know 100% sure how many quests there are, but there's a lot more when you compare it to Remake. So yeah, and I do like the whole the new areas in this game. For example, one of my favorites is probably Golden Saucer. That's probably like one of the coolest parts of the game, because when you compare it to the other places in the game, it's basically this sort of like futuristic sort of otherworldly place where you can go and do all these different games and stuff like that. And that's really cool. And when you compare it to something like Gongaga, that place is all filled with is a foresty type area with mushrooms you can use to travel from place to place and stuff like that. And yeah, it's such a very cool thing to do and to explore all these different areas. And just like in the remake, you get to see more interactions with the characters and kind of like see more of their backstory a bit. Kind of like in the original, but I think it's more, you get to see it in more depth, and it's more like in high definition and better and stuff like that. For example, with Barrett, you get to hear his story, and you get to see what happened to his arm, because one of his arms is now a machine gun, and you get to see what happened to it. And yeah, it's such a, I think when it comes to the storytelling and when it comes to flashbacks and stuff, especially with something like Barrett's backstory, it's really well done. And I think you can experience it, you can control the characters when you're going through that part of the game, I believe. So yeah, and now it's time for some gameplay. So when it comes to Rebirth, one of the main things that's different about this game, if you compare it to this game, compare this game to Remake, is not only the size of your party, but how your party helps you in battle. Because if you played Remake, you'll probably know that it's when you do encounter enemies, it's mainly just the members of your party and nothing else. But if I can find an enemy, if I can find some enemies, let's go over here. Then I can show you what I mean by this, because when it comes to fighting enemies, the whole party will help. Do you think it's quite cool? So I can just find enemies to fight. Okay, so basically combat, still pretty much the same, like that in Remake. The more stuff you do, the more damage you will do, and also depending on what the moves are, you can have your opponents be staggered, which is basically the in-game way of saying the enemy has fallen for a bit, and you can do much more damage to them. So yeah, I think that's quite cool. And when it comes to the character selection screen, so when it comes to like the main menu, so this is very different from the first game, where it's just the character portraits, but now you've got the character models, and they do various stuff like just moving their equipment a bit, looking around, that sort of thing, and also you can like look at the different weapons they can use, and also when it comes to the setting out the equipment stuff. So like again, the equipment and stuff and materia very similar to the first game. Triangles to find all the different materials to like use. So let's say petrified materia is now on Cloud, he can now use that materia, and yeah, and when it comes to upgrading your character skill tree stuff, it's a bit different in this game when compared to Remake, because in Remake, depending on which weapons you had, it was very different. You had like different cores that you could use. Whereas in this game, there's a shop you can find, which is here. You can.
Don't worry,
it's very
no
different.
Pressure. Take as long as you want.
So yes, it's much more of a skill tree in this skill tree in when compared to the first game, because with the Wildland one, as I said before, it's much more of a core based skill tree type of thing, where each weapon that you had different cores, and they all had different things like plus attack by 5%, magic up by 5%, that sort of thing. But in this one, the skill tree is a bit different, so you've got like some of the same stuff. So I think there's like, if I can find something, so enhanced counter, well, guard, counter fire, that sort of thing. Enhanced attack, so yeah, enhanced attack, enhanced durability, enhanced defense, that sort of thing. That's the same, they're similar to how it was in the first game. But then you've got some new sort of moves, and some of them are based on like some of the material that you collect in the game, so the ice, fire, lightning, that sort of thing. But they require the MP, or not MP, the blue bars, and they don't really require any MP for those particular attacks, so I think that's quite nice. And the skill tree is a lot larger than the ones in Remake, so that's quite cool. And each character all have their own different ones. So this is for Barrett, Red 13, Tifa, Aerith, Cat Sith, and Yuffie, which I think is quite nice. And
remember,
and with the weapons, I just want to quickly show you some of the weapons. So for the weapons, so you've got the crystal sword. So basically, you get new weapons, except for the base weapon that your character, that each character has when you start the game. So you've got the crystal sword, the butter sword, which is the main sword Cloud has, the sleek sword, rune sword, umbral sword, so on and so forth. And you will get more weapons as the game progresses. And this is some of the weapons, well, the weapons that Yuffie uses, the weapons that Barrett uses, and the list goes on and on and on until I think you get the point of this. And
you can't judge a book by its
just
cover.
like in the first game, you will have new abilities you can use for the new weapons you collect, and then once you've played through that weapon, or once you've gone through that weapon thing enough times, you will unlock it. And when you compare it again to the first game, the whole map is a whole lot larger. This is like the world map. So this is like, when compared to the first game, because like the first game, the whole map, well, you can't really see it here, but it was pretty much all of this where the cursor is. It was basically all of Midgar, and each area that you were in Midgar was very small. But with this one, with Rebirth, it's a whole lot larger. It's a whole lot more explorable. You can find more locations, more side quests to do, more weapons, new characters to interact with, and just a lot more better stuff to do in terms of like, you can explore, you can find more enemies and stuff like that to fight. And well, of course, because it's a continuation, and yeah, and I think this helps expand the game, where I think Remake didn't, because they are two, even though they're two different games, they are part of one big game in terms of that being Final Fantasy VII, the original, and they're remaking that, and this is much more of the middle big chunk of that game. And yeah, I think the overall world is a whole lot more better. You can do more stuff, as I said before, and yeah, I do like how you can just find new stuff. Like, for example, you can find new summons. So I think the guy you can get summons for is over here. Oh, not over here, in this general direction. So I think he's over. Oh, well, I'm going to show you anyway. So yeah, I think he's in the edge of town. Oh, there he is. Okay. So in this game, you do get some of the old summons, like I think Ifrat, the Chocobo summon, and some others.
Have you spotted any rabbits nearby? From what I've observed, so if you spot a burrow, who knows what sort of things you might find.
But in this game, you get some new summons.
which I think is quite cool. And they're all based on the different areas that you find in the game. So you've got Titan, Phoenix, Alexander, and I'm not going to try and pronounce that. If I do, it's probably I'm gonna butcher it. I might try anyway. Kujata. I'm probably saying it wrong, but each one has a different form. So this is what Titan looks like. This is what Phoenix looks like. This is what Alexander looks like, and this is what Kujata, I hope I'm saying it right, I might be wrong, look like. And also, depending on which area you're in, you can find places where you can learn in big quotation marks about the different summons, and the more stuff you find about them and you analyze them, the more their power will decrease, which makes it easier for you to fight them. So yeah, and then if you do fight them and you do beat them, you will get them as a summon. So that's quite cool. And yeah, Chadley, I think that's his name. Yeah, Chadley is pretty much the same as he was in the first game. So yeah, so that's been it for the gameplay. Now time to go back to the review.
So, with Rebirth, I think that it's, when it comes to that part of the game, or with the part of the game that is adapting from the original game, I would say that it's a whole lot better, and I do like a lot of the character interactions in the game. For example, with Yuffie's interaction, when she becomes part of the party, there's like a bit where she's sort of like I think either introducing herself or reintroducing herself, and she says, "Oh, I'm Yuffie. I'm a ninja. I love to collect materia." And Cloud's like, "Okay," and just walks and basically starts to walk away. And I think interactions like that and how funny a lot of them can really elevates this game. I think it's really fun, and I do like all the interactions with the characters, because like there are some parts like it's like high in energy and really funny and stuff like that, but then there's like the more serious moments. For example, throughout the game, Cloud starts to see Sephiroth more and more. When you compare to the to Remake, you got to see Sephiroth about 4 or 5 times, but in Rebirth, you kind of like see Sephiroth more and more, and he's sort of starting to question Cloud on the events that happened in Cloud's past, which are talked about at the very start of the game. And yeah, and when it comes to that, I think those sort of moments can be more serious and much more life-determining, because as I explained before, there's a bit with Tifa in where she's in this pool of Mako, and that's because Cloud is sort of it's kind of like turning evil. I think I'm probably using that very loosely, because Cloud isn't really himself at that part of the game. It only happens for a moment, but like Cloud is sort of questioning Tifa more and more, like, are you the real Tifa? I saw Tifa, the Tifa I knew was alright or something like that, and she wasn't hurt or injured or something like that. And Tifa's like, no, Cloud, I'm the real one. I have the scar to prove it. And that's how Tifa ends up in the pool of Mako, because Cloud goes to attack her, but she's knocked into the pool of Mako. And yeah, and and those moments, like the more serious moments and the more funnier moments, kind of balance, or well balanced and stuff like that. And the combat is very fun. It's the same thing as if you played the remake version, or the first game. And yeah, I do like how you get more and more new weapons, and it's not just previous weapons you found in the first game, which I do like makes a reference in Rebirth, because there's a bit where in the sunny side beach area, and one of the quests is like, oh, you have to help renovate a hotel, and once you've done the quest, you get to see all of the different weapons and stuff that you've collected for Cloud, Tifa, Aerith, and Barrett in the game, or in the remake version, or in the first game. That's what I'm trying to go with. And yeah, I think that's a really cool reference to the first game. Like, oh, here's the amount of weapons you found, and yeah. Now there's a bit of the game that I haven't talked about yet, and that is Zack. Now Zack, he's kind of like, he appears every so often in the game, and you kind of get to see him at the end of Remake. So basically, at the very end, you kind of see Cloud sort of dragging along an unconscious Cloud past Cloud and Aerith, and there was a cutscene, I think, at the end of Intermission or Interraid, where he goes into the church that Aerith's in, and you do get to see him throughout some parts of Rebirth, and you can even control him from time to time, which I think is really, really cool. And in this version, or in Rebirth, you kind of see like him with Cloud, but also another version of Aerith. So yeah, and again, the game will explain these things, like what's going on, what's happening, who are these other Clouds and Tifas and Aeriths and whatever. But yeah, I think overall, Rebirth is a fun continuation of Remake or Final Fantasy VII Remake, as well as the original Final Fantasy VII game as a whole. And I think all of the new places are really cool to interact with, like when it comes to continuing on the story. And I can't wait for Reunion, I believe, is going to be the next and final game for the Final Fantasy VII Remake Trilogy as a whole. So yeah, I think overall it's an enjoyable experience. It continues the game very well. The only bit that needs a bit of a context thing is when you're in the new section, because if you play Remake and Rebirth back to back, it's kind of like you're starting, when it comes to the end of that, you're like, oh, we've escaped Midgar, now we're in a new place. And the only bit that kind of ties these bits together is in Intergrade, where you do Yuffie's story, which is basically a story where it kind of it kind of follows parallel with Remake, in the sense that when one thing's happening with Cloud and his team, Yuffie is doing something on her own. So, and there is a cutscene where the Cloud and his team have just recently started walking away from Midgard to find another place, and they then hitch a ride to the new place where they can lay low for a bit, and then it's Rebirth. So yeah, I would suggest if you've got Remake and you're going into Rebirth, I would highly suggest just watching on YouTube that small cutscene of Cloud and his team just hitching a ride and stuff like that. So yeah. So in conclusion, I would say that Rebirth, very fun game, very good continuation of Remake, and it's a really just fun game to just explore around in and just have a lot of time just seeing what you can find and explore and stuff like that. So yeah. So that's been my review for Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. I hope you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.